everyone, and welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I am Mike Barner. He is Kirien Sprecher, and we come to you every Wednesday to give you the information that you need to win your fantasy basketball leagues. Kirien, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Let's get into it.
All right, let's start off with our usual news and notes here across the NBA. And we will start out with an injury, of course, because it is the NBA. Tyrese Haliburton did not play Tuesday against the Cavaliers. He has mild groin strain. Ben Shepherd. Now, I don't like to start off the show being mad right away, but this is ridiculous. Ben Shepherd started. He played 32 minutes, 7 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. Why did TJ McConnell only play 21 minutes? Despite playing 21 minutes, he had 10 points and 8 assists. Ben Shepherd playing 11 more minutes than TJ McConnell. That seems like a perfect picture of overcoaching. Play TJ McConnell, right, Kirien? What is this?
Yeah, I knew that's how we were going to start off the show. After we tried to plug TJ McConnell last week, and we were somewhat right. You know, still 1 assist away from a double-double, I believe, or 2 assists away, 2 assists away from a double-double and 21 minutes off the bench. Still a solid game for the backup point guard. Expecting more with Haliburton out. On Haliburton's side, initially they said he was dealing with left hamstring soreness, which has then turned into a mild groin strain, like you said. It's the same leg that caused him to miss 9 of 10 games last January, which we know kind of led to him really struggling down the stretch. Even though the Pacers made a run during the postseason, he still wasn't really himself. So this is definitely concerning for Haliburton, but there hasn't been any update that he's going to miss multiple weeks. You already mentioned it. McConnell needs to play over Ben Shepherd, but we also saw Andrew Nembhard kind of take over. His shot really struggled, but he did take 12 shots, and he was a menace on defense and dished out 9 assists. So pretty solid game from Nembhard. Probably he gets the biggest boost, and hopefully McConnell can see upwards of 25, 28 minutes if Haliburton remains out.
Yeah, if we get 25 minutes out of McConnell, that'd be great. I mean, even if the coaching staff wants to split the minutes with Shepherd and McConnell, I still don't like it, but at least it makes a little bit more sense. Yeah. Maybe they don't want McConnell playing 30 minutes a game, but he should be able to play at least 25.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And Shepherd had 32, so it seems pretty easy to cut the difference and have him each play 27, 28 minutes.
I'm working on sending a letter. I'm sending a letter. It'll be sent by the next show. Don't worry, guys. All right, some good news on the injury front. Kyrie Irving made his return from a back injury and played yesterday against the Nuggets. He had missed 5 straight games, jumped right back into the starting lineup. He played 30 minutes. Not a good stat line, though. He had 11 points, 4 of 18 from the field. He did have 4 steals, which was great. We saw Spencer Dinwiddie shift to the bench. He only played 20 minutes. Another big news out of that game, Derek Lively played just 4 minutes. He had a right ankle sprain. He did not return. The Mavericks play again tonight against the Pelicans, so I would be surprised if Lively plays. So that's a big boost for Daniel Gafford. We will see if Kyrie Irving plays tonight, Kirien. I don't think he does. What do you think?
Yeah, I would assume he probably sits. Look, he's dealing with a bulging disc in his back. That doesn't sound fun. He said he doesn't need surgery. Normally, when you're talking about avoiding surgery, you're still going to miss a couple of weeks at least. So I'm kind of worried that Kyrie's trying to play through injury right now just because Luka is also hurt. She's like, we got to have one of us in the lineup. I'm kind of worried about Kyrie's status right now, but in terms of yesterday's game, I'm not taking too much from that stat line necessarily. I think Lively getting hurt just kind of made things difficult on both sides of the ball for the Nuggets, or made life too easy for the Nuggets, right? On both sides of the ball, made life hard for the Mavs, and that made Kyrie's life even harder because he is trying to get back from a pretty serious injury.
Yeah, back injuries are tricky, which we don't like back injuries. Back injuries are really tricky. Yes, Spencer Dinwiddie moved to the bench. He played 20 minutes. If you're not desperate for an open roster spot and you have Dinwiddie, I would not drop him yet.
No.
I don't think Kyrie Irving is out of the woods yet. I think they're going to look for opportunities to rest him. I would be surprised if he plays both games of back-to-back set for a while. So Dinwiddie, especially if you're in a daily lineup league, Dinwiddie's someone we're not dropping yet, right, Kirien?
Yeah, absolutely. I would hold him for a little bit just because you know the type of upside he can have when Kyrie is resting.
Well, Kirien mentioned Kyrie trying to play through an injury maybe. Don't worry, guys. We don't have that problem on the 76ers. They don't try to play through anything. Yesterday's game against the Thunder, Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey all sat out. That was the 5th straight missed game for Embiid. Paul George went from probable earlier in the day to out. Now, the 76ers also play tonight against the Knicks. This might have been a situation where they just decided to punt yesterday's game and rest everybody at the same time. Andre Drummond, he's missed 5 straight games with a toe injury. Now, we've talked about this a million times. Kirien and I are out on Joel Embiid, so we don't need to rehash that again. However, are you becoming out, Kirien, on Paul George if he's going to rest one half of back-to-back sets?
Yes, if you're resting one half of back-to-back sets, like even if you, like Paul George, you're putting up 25 points, a handful of rebounds, handful of assists every game. When you miss that game, that's a serious hit to any, week-long fan. Obviously, if you're in a daily league and you can just sub him out on the days that he's missing, then you can hold him. But if you're in a week-long setting, him missing one of those games is absolutely detrimental in the long run. When he's been available, though, Paul George has been great. So has Tyrese Maxey. I hope this is just, a back-to-back thing. And maybe this is what people talk about, though, with the culture of Joel Embiid. When you're a Paul George, why can't you take a night off? Joel Embiid's taking every other night off. Why can't I take a night off every 2 weeks or something? That culture is seeped into this organization, and I don't see that changing. So I'm very hesitant. I have Tyrese Maxey in way more leagues than I have Paul George or Joel Embiid, and I'm starting to worry about Maxey too. I mean, he's been fantastic when he's been in the lineup, but you got to be available. Otherwise, none of this matters.
Well, the crazy thing is you would think that there would be some urgency with the 76ers because right now they're not even in the play-in. However, every team behind them stinks. So no one's going to pass them. And they're only I think in the loss column, they're maybe 2 games behind the Bulls. And the Bulls could end up being sellers. The Bulls just lost to the Pelicans. Okay, so the Bulls are nothing to worry about. So they might be, the 76ers might be thinking to themselves, our record stinks. If we win 4 or 5 games in a row, we're the 10th seed and we're in the play-in. And all we want is all of our guys to be healthy by the time that the play-in tournament rolls around. So they might never have that sense of urgency to push these guys to play more.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was kind of thinking it's the other way around. Like this stretch before the All-Star break, the week after the All-Star break, like if you don't make your run during that time, then you are in the bottom half of the league, and there's no point in if those guys are healthy. But I guess you do make a good point that they aren't really threatened right now.
No, I mean, if the Bulls trade Levine and/or Vucevic, they're going to stink.
Yeah,
I mean, they're piecing it together right now just because they're outscoring teams.
And if the Heat trade Jimmy, they could slide down too. So that's a very good point. I think I misread that.
I'm nervous, Kirien. I'll tell you now. I'm lucky. I don't have Embiid, Paul George, or Tyrese Maxey on any of my teams, so I'm not sweating this. But I sweat this for everybody else. If you have Joel Embiid, we trade him. If you have Paul George, you trade him. I'm not panicking on Maxey yet, but if you can get a good return, if you want to shop him, I'm open to it. All right, now let's move on to another injury. The Kings, Malik Monk, he did not play Tuesday against the Bucks because of a groin injury. He had been great. Listen to this, Kirien. Over his last 19 games since becoming a starter, Malik Monk averaged 18.6 points, 4.1 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 1.1 steals, and 2.7 three-pointers. Malik Monk, fantasy stud. Those are great lines. And that's not over 5 games. That's over 19. Now, with Monk out, Keon Ellis started. He had 18 points and 5 three-pointers over 31 minutes. DeMar DeRozan had 28 points. Not sure if this is a long-term issue for Monk. It doesn't seem to be right now. But Keon Ellis has showed that whenever the Kings are missing a guy, he can step up and provide a decent stat line. Right, Kirien?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get to I'll go a little bit deeper on Keon Ellis later when we're talking about our
this is just a little foreshadowing.
Absolutely. And that stretch you're talking about with Monk, like obviously Fox missed some time during that stretch, but he didn't miss that entire stretch. Like Monk was already balling out before Fox got hurt, and then Fox kind of went nuclear for a little bit, but he's the real deal right now, and I'm really happy he's getting a shot as a starter after, having to work off the bench the last couple of seasons.
All right, now here's another name that we've talked about a lot this season. Immanuel Quickley is out again. This time he has a groin injury. He did not play Monday against the Warriors. He did not practice Tuesday. He is technically considered as day-to-day, but he has been ruled out for tonight's game against the Celtics. Now, with him out, it's a boost again for R.J. Barrett and Scotty Barnes. Here are some stats Scotty Barnes with and without Quickley. Now, Barnes is averaging 6.4 assists per game for the season, but over the last 6 games that he played with Quickley, he only averaged 4.8 assists. So we like more assists for Scotty Barnes. Now, I have an article that came out today. I think it's already on the site. I talk about some buy low, sell high guys to hold. I'm actually buying low on Quickley, Kirien, because I think the people who drafted him are so frustrated right now that they're considering borderline dropping him, and you might be able to get him for pennies on the dollar. What do you think about that?
I think that's a very, very fair point. P-Dub in the chat.
There we go.
He's growing frustrated with owning Quickley. I have Quickley in one of my bigger leagues. Luckily, I have a pretty deep roster, so I've been able to mitigate his absences. But, when he's been available, you can see that he's on the burst, on the cusp of, a career high season in his first season in Toronto. And we all kind of expected that. He was kind of limited in his role in New York. And then last season, he kind of came through in the second half after getting traded to Toronto. So I think you're absolutely right. Like, if people are getting frustrated, you can probably get him for pennies on the dollar. And then if, that is a big if, given his start to the season, if he does play consistent minutes during the second half of the season, he's a candidate for 20 points and 10 assists every game, a couple steals, a couple 3-pointers. Like, this is a real deal, solid producer. If you can get him for cheap right now, absolutely you should do that.
Here's a hypothetical trade, and I only bring this up because I also wrote about this guy in the article. Would you trade Russell Westbrook for Immanuel Quickley? If you had Westbrook, would you trade him Quickley?
Well, that's tough.
I would in a heartbeat. I'll preface this by saying I would in a heartbeat because Westbrook is playing way over his head right now because Aaron Gordon's been out. Aaron Gordon's back. Maybe the Nuggets bring in another depth piece at the trade deadline, someone to help at least give them something off the bench. I think that's a sell high, buy low that I think you could get the other manager to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely think about it. With Westbrook right now, you're just worried because you're like, I'm getting consistent production. So why would I trade consistent production for a guy that is not producing right now? But I do think Quickley has the way higher upside, and Westbrook has kind of hit his peak already, or he's plateaued. He's probably on the downward trend. You could the last thing I'll say about Quickley is, like, why is it always like these guys get hurt when they're playing at their absolute best? Paulo got hurt early in the season. Franz got hurt. Quickley dropped a season high 25 points against Detroit last week, and then he sits out the next game. Like, we just can't catch a break. The NBA, these guys are falling like flies.
And we need Quickley to get healthy. One guy who is healthy, 2 guys who are healthy. Oh my gosh. Cameron Johnson and D'Angelo Russell both made their return for the Nets last night against the Trailblazers. Johnson started, played 27 minutes, scored 24 points on 18 shot attempts. We love to see that. Russell, 13 points, 9 assists, 4 steals, despite playing just 21 minutes off the bench. Now, Russell looked like a chance for a big increase in value, but the Nets, they just keep limiting his minutes. He's not going to play more than 30 minutes a game. They're trying to lose games. It's showcase time for Cameron Johnson. He is going to be one of the most popular guys at the trade deadline. So I think here, Kirien, we got to hope that both players get traded, because if they don't, we're not going to see them much over the second half of the season, right?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with everything you said. Cameron Johnson is showcasing his skills for other teams right now. He's going to take a lot of shots. Scored 24, even though he's only 2 for 9 from deep. That's all I'll add. And like I mentioned last week, like, I still don't know who the guy to own for the stretch run is in Brooklyn, right? Because, we're assuming Russell gets traded. We're assuming Cameron Johnson gets traded. We're assuming Cam Thomas comes back. It's just so many moving parts right now. It's just hard to, like, really nail down. One week it's Keon Johnson. The other week it's Noah Clowney. Like, sometimes Jalen Wilson has a couple games that are solid. Like, it's just too many moving parts. Trying to figure out that equation is going to distract you from finding the real diamonds in the rough, in my opinion.
Zaire Williams, I think he's going to be the guy that I feel the most comfortable about on the Nets, because I think Cameron Johnson's gone.
Yeah.
His contract is too good, and he's too good for a contending team not to get him. So I think Russell I'm worried about. I don't know if anybody's going to trade for him, and if he doesn't get traded, he's not playing. over the last month of the season, he's not stepping on the floor. He's not.
My worry about Zaire though is like, what if Cam Thomas doesn't get traded and he takes 40 shot attempts?
But then I don't know if Cam Thomas is going to play. Like he might play. He might play after the All-Star break. He plays until like the middle, maybe the first week of March, and then we don't see him again.
This is getting crazy. Cam Thomas is like 25 years old, and we're talking about resting him for the future. You're right. You're absolutely right. But
Kirien, you have set me up for the perfect segue for our last topic of conversation here, the Utah Jazz. We're talking about, Kirien just said, how are we resting guys that are 25 years old? Don't worry. The Utah Jazz have already started resting 23-year-old Walker Kessler. Now, for tonight's game against the Hornets, Walker Kessler is expected to play, which is great. However, Lauri Markkanen is not. He also sat out Sunday's game against the Nets. Nets, Hornets, two bad teams. Wonder how that back injury came up for Lauri Markkanen. Now, the Jazz are also sitting out Colin Sexton, John Collins. Keontae George is questionable. The Jazz are openly tanking. It's January. We're not even halfway through January. They're openly tanking. They're going to sit anybody they can against bad teams that they're jockeying with for draft positioning. One positive. Isaiah Collier, over the last 6 games, has averaged 8 points, 4.3 rebounds, and 7.5 assists. We do like to see that for a guy who's available in most leagues. But, man, Kirien, the Jazz openly tanking in the beginning of January. Oh, it's disgusting.
One of our first shows, I remember trying to warn people that Markkanen was a bust candidate for exactly this reason. Admittedly, I didn't think it was going to happen this soon. I thought it would probably happen after the All-Star break or something, but here we are. Markkanen slated to miss his 3rd game in the last 11 days. He's missed 7 of Utah's first 38 games. For those of you keeping track at home, he has missed a little less than a 5th of the games. That's almost an absence per week, right? They play 3, 4, 5 games a week. So like that's like an absence or 2 every 3 weeks. That's too much for a guy that was being drafted as high as he was. We can't trust Markkanen for production. We can't really trust anybody right now in Utah. Another, a little foreshadowing. I'll talk about one guy that maybe can come up in the second half of the season when these resting continues. But it's just a ridiculous situation. I'll try to keep this short, but remember when we talked last week about Philly and then their strategy on when to rest guys? Like, why are they resting guys against bad teams? Like, you should just try to beat those bad teams and then rest guys against good teams because you probably won't win. This is the flip side, right? The Utah is resting against bad teams because those games are so much more important for, lottery balls at the end of the season, because if you can lose to those really bad teams, those bad teams are getting a win and you're getting a loss. So it's like kind of the reverse. Does that make sense?
It's just, you're 100% right.
It's disgusting.
They're going to get blown out by they're going to play the Thunder. They're going to get blown out. Markkanen is going to play 20 minutes anyways.
They're down
by 30 points.
They're turning the worst games of the night into like literally unwatchable, like G League players running around. It's terrible and sad, but here we are.
Because we've had that happen with teams resting guys already and so many players injured, we need to find some help in specific categories on the waiver wire. So right now, Kirien and I are going to go category hunting. Okay, we don't hunt deer or birds, and we're not going to shoot a duck or a goose. We're hunting for categories to help you in your fantasy basketball league. So Kirien, which category are you zeroing in on first to help?
All right, so I'm gonna go to the defensive side of the ball real quick, and we'll do blocks and steals because I think both of these guys they're guards, and so they block enough shots that they are worthy for this category in blocks, but they really do their damage in the steals column. I'll start with Coulibaly. He's rostered in 45% of Yahoo leagues. So like if I just want to make sure, like if you need these stats and he's available, you should go get him. Obviously, he's probably available in a lot of the leagues that you guys are playing in because you're probably playing in pretty serious leagues. And this guy, he's on pace for a career high season right now. So if he's taken, you can look to Keon Ellis. We just talked about him. Ellis has taken a huge boost with Monk out and Fox out. Both of those players should be healthy soon. We talked about that earlier. But Ellis has earned a spot in this rotation. He's playing heavy minutes. They fired Mike Brown, and since they fired Mike Brown, Ellis is getting way more PT. Over this 8-game stretch since Brown has been fired, the Kings are winning, and Ellis is averaging 2.4 steals per game. If that was extrapolated out for the entire season, like he'd be top 5 in steals per game on the season. Keon Ellis is rostered in only 16% of leagues. So if you need steals, he's your guy for sure.
I love both of those calls. I'm going to stay on the steals department since we're talking defense, and I'll go with Jaden McDaniels. He is available in 70% of Yahoo leagues. He is known as a good defender, but previous to this season, he had never averaged more than 0.9 steals per game, which is strange given his defensive prowess. However, he has at least 2 steals in 4 of his last 6 games. He's averaging 1.4 steals per game this season. He's logging at least 30 minutes a game. He's locked into a significant starting role, so he's safer there. Also, you're adding him for steals, but as a nice bonus, he's averaging a career-high 4.8 rebounds per game, so he's helping you a little bit there. So Kirien and I have you covered. We just gave you 3 options if you need defense. 3 options. So no matter what kind of league you're in, one of those guys is probably available unless you're in like a 30-team league, right, Kirien?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like Jaden McDaniels too. I think the thing I like about him is people probably spent up high on him, and they're probably disappointed in the rest of the production that they're getting. But if you can get him at a discount as a steals only guy, you're in money because he can have those offensive nights sometimes, but he still is a really good defensive player. And I think he's kind of like people kind of are casting him aside just because of his offensive struggles. I'll stick with defense. I'll go to boards. Boardman gets paid. We talked about Donovan Clingan a little bit earlier. He hurt his ankle. We don't really know the severity. He had grabbed double-digit boards in 3 straight games. He had 5 blocks and 3 steals in that stretch. So you get a little bit of defensive production. Like we were talking about with Utah, Portland, I don't think DeAndre Ayton is the future center of the Portland Trailblazers. I don't think Robert Williams is the future center of the Portland Trailblazers. Clingan's going to get his chance. Right now, he may not get consistent minutes, but when he does at the end of the season, you can count on him to grab at least 8 boards a game, upwards of 10, 12 boards a night. So I think Clingan is a must-add for anybody desperate in boards. He's rostered in like 19% of fantasy leagues right now. If he's taken, you can turn to Mason Plumlee, rostered in only 7% of Yahoo leagues. Over his last 10 games, 9 starts, Plumlee has averaged 8 boards per game. He'll throw in some defensive production. Yusuf Nurkic was suspended, then he was benched, then he was moved out of the rotation, and now he's dealing with an illness that may last weeks. No bueno, nothing good about this situation. Plumlee's not going to change the trajectory of your team. If you're in last place, adding Plumlee is not going to make you a league winner, but he is someone that you must add if you're desperate for boards.
2 things. Love the Clingan thing. Love the Clingan recommendation. I don't think the Trailblazers are going to be playing anybody of significance down the stretch, and Clingan is going to play a lot. 2, Mason Plumlee is so bad. If you are into betting, bet the opposing centers over rebounds all the time. When they play the Suns, you said he's averaging 8 rebounds a game. I find that mind-boggling because when you watch the games, he's giving up so many rebounds. If he was a good rebounder, he might be able to average 15 a game. My Lord. I mean, every opposing center, I think almost everyone, I believe it was one Miles Turner game, who's not a great rebounder, and then Clint Capella the other night because Okongwu played more minutes. I believe every other starting center that has gone against him has grabbed at least 10 rebounds in a game. So keep that in your mind for your betting purposes.
That just shows you how bad of a rebounder Yusuf Nurkic is.
Yes. Oh, man. I mean, the Suns are probably going to have to make a trade for center, right?
Yeah.
They got to do something. Yeah. All right. I'm going to try and help out with helpers, assists. We talked about Andrew Nembhard. He is still available, surprisingly, in 71% of Yahoo leagues. And now I'm not just recommending him because Haliburton is out. He's averaging 5 assists a game for the entire season. Now, in both of his first 2 seasons in the league, he averaged at least 4.1 assists per game. He's locked in as a starter for the Pacers. He's averaging 28 minutes a game. Assists are not easy to find on the waiver wire, and Nembhard is just here for the taking. What we also like, Nembhard is not just assists. He's averaging a respectable 10.7 points per game, and he's shooting 46.4% from the field. So that's a nice bonus. But if you need assists, run, don't walk to add Andrew Nembhard.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. Nembhard was dropped in a couple of my like 16 team leagues, which is kind of surprising for like a starter, just because when injuries piled up, there's no IR spots really available, and he was hurt at the beginning of the season for a long time. But yeah, I absolutely love him. I think Nembhard really impressed a lot of people during the playoffs last year, and then maybe he was overdrafted, so he could be another one of those situations where managers are a little upset with what they're getting and you can get him at a discount. But even when Haliburton comes back, Nembhard is a great source of assists. And like you said, assists are very hard to come by on the waiver wire. Another thing that's really hard to come by on the waiver wire are points, because if you score points, people that play fantasy basketball probably know that you score points. So, I think Brice Sensabaugh is probably like the best option we have right now. He's available in nearly every Yahoo league. The last 4 times that Sensabaugh has played at least 18 minutes, he's done that in 4 of the last 6 games. He's missed a couple games during that stretch. He's scored 20 points, 34, 27, and 16 points. He didn't play more than 28 minutes in any of those games. So if he ever gets to see a 35-minute role, which he probably will because he plays in Utah, and we've already talked about everything that's happening in Utah, this guy can fill it up. Sensabaugh, it's only a matter of time until he gets this PT. John Collins, Lauri Markkanen, they're either going to get traded or they're going to get rested. And Sensabaugh is a guy that can drop 20, even in limited minutes. So like I said, points are hard to come by. Sensabaugh is scoring a lot of points. If you need him, if you need points, he's your guy.
100% agree with Sensabaugh. He is one of the few guys that is going to play. Now, he missed a game recently. I think he was sick. So it's not like he was one of these rest guys. He's going to play. So I love that, Kirien. I am going to help out for my final guy with 3-pointers. We're going to go Malik Beasley, who is available in 62% of Yahoo leagues. Now, if you watch that Pistons-Knicks game, Malik Beasley hit 6 3-pointers in that win in Madison Square Garden. He only played 18 minutes, and he hit 6 3-pointers. He was on fire, especially late in the game. Beasley's made at least 4 3-pointers in 5 of his last 6 games. He is averaging 3.8 3-pointers per game for the season. He's shooting just over 40% from behind the arc. What we like here and what Shannon likes. The Pistons are no longer a tanking team. The Pistons are firmly in the hunt for a playoff spot. So Beasley is not someone that we need to worry about being rested over the second half of the season. They need his shooting. He's got all the confidence in the world to shoot. If you need 3-pointers, I'm surprised Malik Beasley is still available in this many leagues. I think he's not going to be available in this many leagues for much longer. So add him now while you still can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was watching the Thunder Cavs game on ESPN. I think that was the other night. And they were showing highlights of that Knicks Pistons game. And, I long for the old school Sports Center days where they just have the ticker of what games are going to be recapped. And it's like a 2-minute highlight video. They were doing highlights on ESPN for, I don't watch ESPN too often anymore because I'm just looking for my highlights. And in that highlight, they just showed Malik Beasley in the corner, bang. Malik Beasley in the corner, bang. And that's been the case for the last month and a half, guys. Like, this isn't like, he had a couple good games. Like, he's been doing this all season. He's been one of the best waiver wire. He's been one of the best free agent signings for the Pistons. This is real life, or not fantasy. Yep. And he should be rostered, like you said, in way more leagues. I think he kind of gets that rep as like a 3-and-D guy, and he can absolutely hit the threes, but he's doing a little bit of everything in Detroit. So definitely should be rostered in way more leagues.
Now, it is almost time for the best segment in all the podcasting universe. So go call your friends. Go call your family. If your kids are homesick, my son was homesick yesterday. He's not. If he was home today, I'd call him in so he could listen to him. But he's not today. So get ready. Get everybody available. But before we do that, Kirien, I think we've got time to answer a few questions in the chat.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Teo Pagan said, would you trade PG for DeJounte 9-cat? I think I'm rather going to have DeJounte. I know they're both probably going to be in taking situations. DeJounte has just been the better player recently and overall. And PG's missing too many games. What say you?
100%. I couldn't make that trade fast enough. I want no part of Paul George on my team.
Agreed. Chinchilla, good luck with your lines, buddy. Anthony does it again. Yeah, we'll
I like
see.
that. Simons. I think that was intentional. Sigh. He did it. Another one.
Yeah, absolutely. You're gonna have to live with those. Trusting guys in Portland's gonna be a little difficult. Adding on to that, James says, "Is Scoot for real?" Tune into this last segment, and maybe I'll give you my take on that, James. Thanks for the question. Christian Rogers says, "Good morning, fellas. Is Jalen Smith a hold for the trade deadline? I like his upside if Vucevic is traded." We got our Chicago Bulls minute, Mike. What's
Here we go. We almost missed the Bulls minute, but thank you, Christian, for bringing it to our attention. I honestly don't think the Bulls are going to trade Vucevic. I think they would love to trade Levine, maybe Torrey Craig. They should trade Lonzo Ball, but I don't think they will. I honestly would not be surprised. This is disgusting. I would not be surprised if they don't make any trades. I think they really do want to make the play-in tournament. I'm okay with holding Jalen Smith if you have a free roster spot. But if there's anybody of significance that can help you now, I would rather add that. I would much rather add that person. Like, I'd rather have Clingan as a stash than Jalen Smith. And that's not even without hesitation.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Jalen Smith is one of these, per 36 minutes guys, right? Per minute guys. He's only played more than 19 minutes. He's played over 20 minutes only once this season. He posted 11 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 blocks. So, I get it. The upside is there for sure. But I think, Donovan Clingan is a much better hold. And even if Vucevic gets traded, I don't think Jalen Smith's going to play 33 minutes every night. He's still going to play 24, 25 minutes in a best case scenario. All right, a couple more here. Chinchilla also says, "Is Sharp more of a hold than Anthony? Both have been playing well as streams bottom rosters, but it's hard believing it." Yeah, I would agree with this. I think Sharp's rebounding ability just kind of gives him a higher floor. And they're both streaky shooters. When they're hot, they're both solid candidates. But I think Sharp just gives his rebounding gives him a little bit higher floor, and Anthony's dimes don't really help out as much as Sharp's rebounding. What say you?
The reason why I would prefer Sharp over Simons is I think Simons is a bigger rest candidate down the stretch than Sharp is. I think Sharp's going to play regardless if they're tanking or not, and Simons might not. So that's why I would give the edge to Sharp.
Yeah, that's fair. Sharp has had some, adductor injuries and stuff, so he has missed some games, but he's not really a rester. That's fair. Another Sharp question: Sharp and Benedict Mathurin for Bane. Is this a good deal? I think if you were starting Sharp and Benedict, anytime you trade two guys for one guy, I'm going to side with the two guys just because it's two guys that play heavy minutes and they can produce value. But if one of those guys was a bench guy and then you're, replacing one of the starters with Bane, that's an upgrade. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I also don't mind it because you take out, the potential Trailblazer shenanigans out of the equation. For later on in the season. So I think you got the side that has the higher floor. You don't have the side with the highest upside, but you have the high side with the highest floor by getting Bane for those two.
For sure. Absolutely agreed. All right. We got maybe a couple more here. We got Claxton and Andrew Wiggins for Embiid. Look, I appreciate the great show, Angie. If you have been tuning in, you know where we side on Embiid. We also don't really like Claxton. So this is kind of a dumpster fire here. I don't think you can.
I would do this.
Yeah.
This is the one situation where I would do it for Embiid because I don't think Claxton's going to play. I don't think Claxton's going to play at all down the stretch. And Andrew Wiggins, yes, he's been better this season, but man, he misses a lot of time. And if it's not injuries, he's got a lot of personal stuff come up too that he misses games for. And I don't think the Warriors are going to push him to play. So, Wiggins is points. He's not doing a whole lot elsewhere. So, if you're in a daily lineup league, I would do this for Embiid 100%. If you're in a weekly lineup league, it's a little bit scarier because you might only get Embiid to play 1 out of 4 games in a week. But I think Claxton doesn't play. I don't think Claxton's going to play the whole last month of this season. So I would do Embiid.
Yeah. I think you kind of talked me into it. You know, I'm so turned off that anytime I see the name Embiid, I'm just like, no, get it away, get it as far away as you can. But look, like I don't think, like you said, like I don't think you're really missing much if you get rid of Claxton and Wiggins.
Yeah.
And Embiid gives you the maybe, the what if he can play a bunch of games. All right, well, we got two more maybe. Quick, would you rather have Paulo or LeBron rest of the season points league?
Paulo, that's not close.
I agree. All right. Would you trade Collins and Garland for Lillard? 9-cat. John Collins, I'm assuming.
Yeah, let's assume.
Yeah. I'm in Wisconsin. I'm a Wisconsin guy. I'm not a Bucks fan. I'm a Bulls fan. All my friends tell me that Lillard is washed and that the Bucks aren't going to win any championships. I kind of disagree with them, but they watch the Bucks way more closely than I do. Garland has been fantastic, and then you got the 2-for-1 there. So I don't think Lillard is that much of an upgrade over Garland at this point, even if he's a number 2 option.
I agree. You're hoping here that Collins gets traded in real life away from the Jazz and starts playing again. If he does, then I would much rather have Collins and Garland than Lillard. Now, if he doesn't and he stays on the Jazz, then, like you said, it's Garland for Lillard, and it's pretty close. So I think I would not make the trade in the hopes that Collins gets traded in real life and he gets a big boost to his fantasy value.
Yep, that's fair. All right, I'm going to do a couple more quick ones. Should we go after Jimmy Butler, whether we think he's going to be traded or not? I think he's got to be traded. And I probably wouldn't target him in fantasy because I think he's going to go to like the Suns and be like a 3rd or 4th guy.
You'd have to give up very little to get him. I would give up maybe the same for him as I would for Quickley if we're talking about that range, because I think they come with similar risks.
All right. Paul says, I totally agree with that. Paul says Jonathan Isaac or Wendell Carter Jr. This doesn't sound like a decision I want to be making. With Goga out, I can see a little bit of a boost. I'm probably going to roll with Wendell Carter just because Jonathan Isaac they're both injury prone, but I trust Wendell Carter just a little bit more.
I think I would take Isaac just because I like the upside on the defensive stats. I can't trust Wendell. I know Isaac's hurt all the time too, but man, Wendell Carter Jr., I understand the hammering of the Bulls because they ended up trading the pick that ended up being Franz Wagner. But I'm telling you right now, losing Wendell Carter Jr. is nothing because that guy can't stay healthy at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, one more from Daniel. He says Sohan or Scoot in Dynasty head-to-head 11-cat.
Double doubles and triple doubles.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably I think Dynasty is Scoot still has the higher upside. I just think if he ever becomes the lead point guard, we saw all the chat talking about Simons being a bust. I think Scoot gets his chance eventually, and he has the higher upside. I think Sohan's a really solid player, but I don't think he has quite the upside that Scoot has.
Want to thank everyone for giving their questions today in the chat. This is the perfect segue, Kirien, talking about Scoot, into our What Was That stat lines of the week. Kirien, you are up first.
All right. I mean, you said it. Sticking with Scoot Henderson, man. Against Brooklyn last night, Tuesday, 39 points, 13 for 18 from the field, 8 for 10 from deep, 6 assists, 4 boards, and 2 steals in 39 minutes. He made 6 3-pointers in the first half, which tied his career high. Obviously, they surpassed that in the second half. He started in place of Denny Avdija, who was starting in place of Jeremy Grant. So we were already trying to see the tumble effect of the tanking. Before this game, though, Scoot had 3 points against Miami on Saturday, and he had been held to single digits in 7 of his last 15 before this explosion. So, definitely worth a what was that? I really like Scoot. I don't really like him shooting 10 3-pointers a game. When he's making them, obviously he can make them. I think he's more of that old school point guard, get into that mid-range, that Chris Paul type of guy. When Chauncey Billups came in, you could not have tempered my expectations. I was like, look, we got the old school point guard. We got the new school, old school point guard, right? He wears the headband. He's still super explosive, but he plays that old school, pick and roll, dish and dunk kind of game. that just hasn't come to fruition yet. I don't know what they're waiting for. I think it's still coming. I have Scoot in multiple dynasty leagues, actually in both of my dynasty leagues. I'm only in 2. And I'm waiting for it. I'm hoping this is a sign of things to come. But we've seen this before, right? He did this a lot during his rookie season. Not a lot, but a couple times during his rookie season where he had huge explosions. And then the consistency just wasn't there.
Yeah, the Scoot thing, Scoot's at the end of last season, when the Trailblazers were tanking, he put up some pretty valuable fantasy stat lines. He could be one of the tanking all-stars again this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like that call, Kieran. All right, now for my what was that stat line of the week? One of our show favorites, Kyle Kuzma, on December 12th against the Thunder. He played 30 minutes, which is great because Kuzma hasn't always been playing a lot. He had 6 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists in the game. He shot 2 of 12 from the field, 0 for 6 from behind the arc. Kirien, his plus-minus in the game was -40. That is correct, -40. That is one of the wildest things I've seen in a long time. Per NBA.com, Kuzma has a -19.5 net rating for the season, which is the worst of any player in the NBA who has appeared in at least 10 games this season. Crazy stat. Among the worst 10 players in the league in terms of net rating, 6 of them play for the Wizards. 6 of the 10. And this goes players into the 400s, guys. This is what we're talking about. 6 of the 10 for the Wizards. Kuzma had averaged at least 21.2 points in both of the last 2 seasons. He has appeared in 21 games this season. He has scored 10 or fewer points in 8 of those 21 games. He did score 22 points against the Timberwolves on Monday. Still, he's averaging 14.5 points per game. -40 plus-minus for Kuzma in a game. What was that? Please, Wizards, trade Kyle Kuzma. Please send him anywhere. Jimmy Butler said he'd be traded anywhere. He was lying. Kyle Kuzma, send him anywhere, please.
My father-in-law talks a lot about, soccer. He runs his own business, and I think his business just is him watching soccer games all afternoon. But he is obsessed with relegation. Anytime we talk about the NBA, he used to love the NBA back in the heyday, as he likes to call it. He doesn't watch it too much anymore. But he is obsessed with relegation. And the more and more I talk with him about it, the more and more I'm like, we got to do something about these teams, man. Because these guys, like we talked about all of them, right? Portland, Utah, Washington. These teams don't care. They don't care about the standings. They don't care about the nightly games. They don't even really care about the development of young players because, like you said, Kuzma's still getting 30 minutes. If it was like a full tank and you're just like, we're gonna start Keyshawn George, we want to try new things. Then why did you sign Valanciunas? Why did you do these things? Relegation needs to be brought up more. I think it's a good way to just end this show. I'm just going to say it, throw it out into the ether and see where it takes us. But
well, listen, I think the Wizards heard last year that somebody offered the Bulls 5 second-round picks for Andre Drummond. So they signed Valanciunas with the hopes of contacting that team and getting 5 second-round picks.
I think that was just Sam Presti pulling the chains on everybody, but it's getting disgusting out here, man. I start looking at the standings, I'm just like, how is this even possible?
It's getting hairy times, and with that is the end of today's episode of the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Thank you all for joining us. Kirien will be off next week. He will have his feet in the sand. He will probably be watching Bulls replays on his iPad on his League Pass. Don't worry, he'll still be watching. We will have a special guest joining me on the show. I'm not going to say who it is. I do have it lined up as long as he doesn't flake on me. But it's going to be fun and you're going to love it. So until then, Kirien, enjoy your vacation. Everybody else, hope you rack up some W's and that your fantasy basketball team stays healthy.
Adios, everybody. Have a good one.